Hi everyone, and welcome to our characters panel this afternoon. We have a wonderful bunch of characters on this panel, and I'm going to get them to introduce themselves to you. And firstly, I'm Emma Nichols, for those who aren't aware, and I write in the genre of lesbian fiction, predominantly finance. No, I do not touch finance. Predominantly romance, but also with a bit of twist and turny stuff going on along the way. On the panel today, we have Arizona, we have Michelle Binfield, we have Katie Williamson, we have Jax Mayer, and we have LL Shelton, who's only just come off a reading. So fantastic, ladies. Thank you very much for being here. And I'd like you to introduce yourselves now by also saying if there's a particular theme that runs through your characters in your book and your lead characters in your book. So is there a theme that tends to kind of come through? And if not, that's fine. But if there is, what is it? So Michelle, do you want to kick off?
I will. Yeah, I was just thinking about how much I'd like to read a book about lesbians in finance that you would write, Emma, for all of us. But that would be fun. I'm Michelle Binfield. M.A. Binfield is my writing name. I'm a fairly new author. Just my second book is out next week, and I'm just about to finish my third. I write lesbian romance, women loving women romance, not all lesbians, all stripes of character. In terms of themes, I like we're talking about characters, so I like really complex characters, people that don't do what they're supposed to and just don't always know the right thing to do in a given situation, and it's not for lack of good intention. So if there's a theme around that somehow.
Lovely, thank you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, great stuff. Arizona.
Hi everyone, I'm Arizona Tape. I write all kinds of genres because I like all kinds of things. But I think mainly I'm writing lots of fantasy and paranormal stuff, and obviously also with women loving women. And I would say, I was recently talking about this, and apparently I have a thing for innocent, naive characters. But I think that comes because I really like growth, and I think I enjoy taking someone that maybe is a little missing some things or lacking some gaps, have some gaps in their worldview or in their knowledge, and then taking them on a journey where they end up being a much more well-rounded character at the end, and redemption and heartbreak. But I'm not supposed to do the heartbreak, but I love a good heartbreak, so. Yeah.
Rule breaker.
Maybe a little bit.
A little.
A little.
Oh, lovely. Brilliant. Thank you. KD, welcome.
Thank you. I'm Katie Williamson. I guess you could say I write women loves women fiction because I too have all sorts in my stories. I would say the overall themes were a huge touch of realism and family. It seems to be my biggest things through all my books. My first few books were the Cops and Docs series. I've moved on to different stuff. It's still romance, but it's a tad bit different from what I've written before, and I'm enjoying kind of doing a little something different right
now. Oh, awesome! I look forward to hearing about that one later.
Thank you.
Jax.
Hi, I'm Jax Mayer, and I write characters that, at least to this point, I would say are underrepresented. So my first book, which ended up turning into a series, and then spawned other characters, revolved around an autistic main character, and who's gender nonconforming. And then in my second series, which I guess is still just one book, but it'll be more. I just need time to write it. I've got a demisexual character in there, and in the end, they're all meant to be very, very realistic, and getting into, like, all of the conflict is internal based conflict. It's not artificial external stuff. And I'm not saying all external stuff is artificial, just it all comes from their trauma and their wounds and their struggles, and then how that plays out within the relationship itself. which gets really fun with the book I'm writing right now, which is a slow burn soulmate story, which usually doesn't happen that way. But I'm reincarnating my first, one of my first two couples, and really playing with what happens if you don't heal from all of the stuff that happened before. Now you're come into it, and that's how you can make your couple be slow burn, even though they should have fallen together immediately. So I like playing with that type of stuff.
Yeah, cool. So there's an aspect of reality by the sounds of it as well then in your work, in your characters.
Sorry, what was the second part?
An aspect of reality of life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I feel like if you don't feel like my characters are people you could run into on the street, then I've lost my way.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. LL, welcome.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, hi. Glad to be here. I'm LL Shelton. I am in the United States on the East Coast, so it's about 10:30 here, a little bit after 10:30. I write, I've dabbled in paranormal, romance, and I really enjoy erotica. So I'm still kind of feeling myself out there and seeing what genre really fits with me. As far as theme, all my books are really strong character driven, and I try to give my characters quirks and flaws. I like to give a lot of my characters either visible or invisible disabilities. And then when I start to write them, my whole goal is to have the reader not concentrate on the flaws and the disabilities, but yet fall in love with them as a person. So I that's usually about the way I tackle my characters. Yeah,
that's beautiful. That's really nice and cozy and warm. That's brilliant. Thank you. So can you stay on as well, Ella, and say, have you written books in sequels, series books at all? If you have. Yeah. If you have you got an arc, and does that arc, in terms of your character arc, do you consider that development in book one, or do you consider it for the whole arc before you write? How does it work?
Well, I'm about the biggest pantser you can find. Unfortunately, when I wrote my first book, I did not think it was going to be another book, a sequel. Only one of my books did I plan a sequel, and that was the Knights of Lily Ann series. The other ones did become sequels. And mostly that's because the readers fell in love with the characters and they wanted more. And I'm sitting here thinking, I'm done, okay, I'm done. And they're like, no, you're not, and so I had to, develop them even more into the second book. Knowing that Lily Ann was going to be a sequel, yes, I built her up very strong in the first book and carried it into the second book. And so now I don't even think if it's going to be a sequel, because I never know.
Yeah. You still managed to develop the characters even further, even without knowing there was a second book coming. So, yes. So there's always some scope for growth. And Jax, thank you, Jax. You're both a pantser and a sequeler, a series writer. So, what about you? How do you take that arc, character development arc?
So with the Marines Heart series, so originally, I mean, that whole series is the way it is because nothing was planned. So book one happens in the now. Book two is a prequel, and it was just because I wanted to write it. Then eventually I was like, it'd be fun to explore this, a moment of transition. So I think even if you don't plan it, if you focus on moments where there's big changes in their life, it's not that difficult per se to create the next bit of the arc. So like for Cam, when she's 20, I mean, one, that's a time of transition anyway for people when they're young, but she meets Sharon early in their Marine Corps career. So then I jumped forward to 6 years later when Cam is getting ready to leave and Sharon is not. And even though they knew that was going to happen, there's extra aspects to it now, because in the time between they joined and this time when she's finishing her enlistment, the Iraq War has started. And so having a big moment of conflict where their lives are going completely different directions, from college to deployment, made it really easy for me to find it. And then within it, I was like, what would Cam's arc be then? Was her being able to discover for the first time that she's autistic by going to a seminar on campus, like total luck from an outside perspective. So that created that. And then while writing it, there became a spin-off character. And then while writing that book, there was another spin-off character. And so now, at least when I was writing with book 4 with my co-writer and stuff, I realized that I saw there was a book 5, and the book 5 will be in 2 different times in the past, where they all meet and that stuff starts, and then current time. So I can wrap up the series, and that is now reasonably planned. And I made sure to think it through enough that I hopefully didn't write myself in a corner.
Yeah.
And there's few enough details in book 4 that I should be plenty fine. And then, so that was just thinking on the fly and making notes as I went.
And it worked. And it works because you're spinning through time. So inevitably, as you say, your characters are like us as human beings. They are human beings. They will be different at different time spans. And so you're using the natural world in effect, and life that's going on for them. So that's fantastic.
Yes. And then with the other series, that was planned to be 2 books, just because with slow burns, you can only have, there's only so much that happens in a way. And it had to be a slow burn. There was no fast way to bring them together. So it's like that brought them through the first just couple months, and then, but they're at the South Pole. So the outside world doesn't really exist very much right now. So in order to really give them that aspect, I need to take them off the ice and put them back in the real world and then mess them up. And I don't know if there would be a book 3 or if I can manage to wrap them up in a second book. So as I go, I'll be looking at how much is getting done, because I am a pantser and I don't know. I'm not going to outline that. I'm just going to let it kind of flow and see what happens. So I figured, look for those moments, right? Look for those catalysts. And even if you're not thinking of a really big arc, it could be kind of handy to think, okay, just think a couple years forward. Where do you expect these people to be? And you can kind of work some of that in, even if you're not sure how long a series will be or if it will be a series. You should still have an idea of where your character's going.
Excellent, thank you. I'm sure anyone who's starting to write will take that as great advice. Thanks for that, Jax. KD, how about you? You're on mute.
My first 4 books, I guess you could quantify them as a series, but it was a series in content rather than character. The first 2 books, Blurred Lines and Crossing Lines, had the same main characters and everything. And my publisher started it out that way. It was already kind of finished, and it was such a big book that we wanted to show with Nora and Kelly, like the significant changes with them as people and things around them. And then, book 1 to me was more Kelly, and book 2 was more Nora. Having said that, with my other 2 books, I kind of threw everything else out the window and started fresh. I am a huge pantser myself. I go by chapter to chapter. It's like I wake up in the morning or something and I was like, okay, that sounds good for them. I tried to outline once and I feel like I've written the book already after I get done with it, and I don't want to do the work anymore. So I decided, I'm just going to take it bit by bit. For the other 2 books in the series, I wanted to keep that cop and, doc dynamic in a way. But even though the overall things stayed with family and a bit of realism, I kind of went further and explored a more cultural aspect of family. Being Black, a lot of times in the Black community, you take care of your family, period. No matter what's going on between you, no matter how much resentment there is, if your dad doesn't like you, or doesn't like something about you, it doesn't matter. You still take care of him. And I kind of explore that aspect in Between the Lines with Tanya, who is a psychiatrist. So she works in the other main character, she's Haley is younger. So it's kind of like a age gap romance in a way. But you have Tanya, who is not an ice queen per se, not by any means, but she's kind of caught up in that web of family first, to the detriment of everything else, family first. And so she hasn't been living a life since she's been taking care of her dad. So I really wanted to explore that and have her dad just not be settled at all with her sexuality. I mean, he's just flat out hates who she is. He has his own rosy picture. He's always telling her, when are you going to get married? I'm almost too old, I want grandkids before I die. And, so it's like that whole book encapsulates that. And when she meets Haley, that family first thing still lingers, but it just kind of blows it up a little bit. Yeah. And she learns that family can be extended. With Drawing the Lines, the theme is still kind of family, but a different type of family, because you have characters and best friends that, that are more best friends based type family thing. So throughout, I kind of just explore like different aspects, and they've all been pretty much slow burns. They're pretty much slow burns, because I felt like they needed to be that way, and the characters wanted it that way, so they said. So I just did, whatever they told me. And as I continued after that series, I wrote Pink, which is not a romance at all. I mean, it's very much character driven. It's a complex character who, if you were to see her physically, she looks a lot like me, I guess you could say. It's not me, but she looks a lot like me. And, she's this, this butch, tall, kind of burly and everything. And her girlfriend cheats on her, and it just totally breaks her apart. It totally decimates her. And the story itself is, you don't like her a lot of the times. So I feel like I'm not afraid to write characters that people are not necessarily gonna like on their journey to the end. I have no fear of that. And I know for a fact, just reading it, I didn't like her, most of the time, until she had that breakthrough.
Sounds like you got a theme going there as well. It sounds like you got a theme going there as well with you. Unlikable in there somewhere.
Yeah. So I mean, I have no problem with that, because I feel like individually, there's always something about us that other people do not enjoy.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife calls me an asshole. I know I'm an asshole, but throughout our years of being together, I've gone from 90% to maybe 75%. So, I'm gonna always be an asshole. And, and I like writing books to where that person is that person. And by the end of it, there's not this huge change. There's maybe some blunting of the edges.
Yeah.
And the whole theme is, that person loving that other person for who they are.
That's great. Thank you very much. I'm really glad your wife's making a good woman out of you. That's good. And our readers will be loving that too. So that's fantastic. Arizona, how about you?
Hi. Sorry, what was the question again?
Good question. What was the question? Because we're talking about character arcs and
right.
Yeah, over series of books. Is it planned out for you, or does it evolve?
I think a little bit of both for me. I think I often go into books with like, this character is going to do this, and then this character goes, yes, and I'm going to do this and this and this and this too, and we're going to have a lot more books. But so I would always kind of like have to account for story growth and arc growth per book, and then growth over the series as well, and how the books can like link to each other, because I mostly write like books that continue from 1, 2 to 3 instead of like separate contained arcs. Like I'd like to have complete arcs and complete stories in every book, but you'd have to read the previous book often to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think I like to believe that I can control my characters and can dictate this is what's going to happen. But I think often when you're writing, I think for me it's a bit like processing. Sometimes I write something down, I had something completely different planned, I read it and I go, wow, that doesn't make any sense at all. What am I doing? This is not how real life is. Nobody talks this way, nobody acts this way. And then the whole plot kind of changes.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes key moments come from a different place than you expect. I think sometimes people think that like these big growth moments are these big milestone events, and sometimes it can just really be this one person saying something or seeing something, and suddenly you have this milestone in your book that wasn't maybe necessarily planned.
Yeah.
But they do it anyway, so.
And that sounds as though from a few so far, everyone so far, I think that our characters kind of talk to us as well.
Yes, I think
wants to move forward, you know.
Yeah, I think so. I think to a degree there has to be some crafting and sculpting that you do as an author of your character in deciding what you want. And I think then there comes like the intuitive, natural creative part that you breathe life into it, and then they start doing things on their own when they're well crafted. And I think you can always tell when you've made a character that feels real once they start acting like they're real. And I have characters that I've made or that I wanted to make, and then I wouldn't like how they were coming across on the page, or I didn't like how they were. And that would be my fault because I didn't make them the right way. And then sometimes you make someone and it just clicks what they are and who they are, and they start doing their own thing.
And of course, the beautiful thing is we can change them.
Yes, we can, and sometimes we
can't.
And sometimes we can't at all. I think sometimes they take on a life of their own. And I think that's what keeps it interesting for writers as well, is that you get to discover your character. And for me, at least, I get to learn things through my character because they take me on a journey, and I hope they take the readers on a journey as well.
Yeah, hey, that's lovely. Thank you. And Michelle?
Sorry, I haven't written series, so all my books are standalone. I sort of quite like reading series, so I don't know why I don't write them. But I think for me that arc is really important, but within one book. I suppose that's the short answer. So I think playing with the time, you know, having the ability to say, well, this happened, a bit like Jack said, and then here we are 5 years later, and there's a second chance for these characters. I quite like that sort of journey or arc, but not across different books.
Do your characters talk to you in the same way others authors have said? You know, they kind of guide you on your.
They do. I mean, I think when you create them to begin with, they're very clear to you, aren't they? Or they sort of suggest themselves to you, and then they do surprising things. I remember I would read about people saying that if they were writers and think, of course your character can't surprise you, it's ridiculous. But they can, of course. I remember when I was writing One Small Step, as a character Iris, and she's sort of very diffident and English, and works as an office manager or something. She's very sort of emotionally closed, and she started to write poetry. I mean, she'd always written poetry, but I discovered that she was this sort of frustrated poet. I was so annoyed because it meant I had to learn about poetry. And sort of, there was a scene that I got obsessed about writing where she goes to a poetry slam. I've never been to a poetry slam, and I was like, please don't go to a poetry slam. She really wanted to, and she really wanted to meet the other woman that interested at this poetry slam and discover they had this in common. And I was like, and then eventually I wrote a bit of poetry. There's a stanza or two of poetry, which I've never done in my life, which she made me write to put, she needed to give voice to in that book. So it's not as mad as it sounds, actually, that characters do things that surprise you. Yeah.
So actually, are we evolving as authors as a function of how our characters are reacting with us and taking us on this journey?
I think, I guess so. Or maybe she just thought, I don't want to be this sort of just, this, I don't want to be in this box you're trying to put me in. I've got more to me than that, actually. I'm more than you're letting me be. And so
that's beautiful.
Do
and you listened.
I did, yeah. I was tempted not to, but she, yeah.
So it would have been easy. Yeah. Oh, well done. That's lovely. We've got loads of questions coming through, so I'm going to kind of target a couple of people, or you can put your hand up if you particularly want to answer the question, so we can get as many questions as possible that our audience is asking. So from Ellie, do you choose the characters or do they choose you? So Michelle, while you're here, do they choose you? Do your characters choose you, or have you chosen them?
I think you choose them to an extent. I mean, there's so many of them. Like in my writing world, my people I could write books about, there's hundreds of characters, isn't there? You meet them all the time, and many of them are deserving of a book. So in a way, you choose the ones that you choose to write about and put in a book, but they exist. They exist. They are component parts of something or people, and they exist as characters in your mind, in your world. And they're there waiting for their chance to be in a book, I think. So I think it's a bit of both, actually. They exist and they're there, and sometimes they push themselves to the front and think, it's time, I want you to write about me now. So I think in that sense, there's some books that I think, why haven't I written that? Because they've been with me for a really long time, those people, and they do deserve a book, and there's just not enough time, is there, to get them all out on paper and do that.
That means there's more books in the line.
Yeah, I mean, if you can keep going, if your elbows are up to it.
Bless you, yeah. Thank you, thanks. LL, what about you? Do your characters choose you, or because you've some very distinct?
Yeah, I think it starts off with me choosing them, but they become them. I might choose the basics. This woman's going to be 5'7" and blonde, and she's going to be a butch, or she's going to be a femme, or I might choose all that, but as the character develops, they develop themselves, and sometimes they don't like what I picked for them, so they end up switching anyhow. But I do believe my characters really, develop themselves within my head. And I've had characters that I tried to develop and they fizzled out and they were just taken out of the book. Secondary ones, especially, that just didn't come to be. So, I have so many characters in my head. It's just crazy. And I might have a description in what they look like and some basics, but I don't know them until I start to write, and then they tell me who they are.
They tell you where to go. Yeah.
Oh,
excellent. Cool. Arizona, what about you?
I think for me, it is also a bit of both. I think I like to, I'm very, I like a lot of things. So I like to imagine what kind of person, for instance, like what kind of person would play the violin. And then I like to start imagining this violin player. Why would they pick this instrument? And then dig deeper into, if they like the violin, what do they like else? And kind of build this character, often just from this one random thing that I've seen that piques my interest. And just kind of work my way backwards into what kind of person would like this, and not necessarily I'm going to build this kind of person and they will like this, but rather the other way around. And then at some point they'll go, I like this for this reason. And I'll go, oh, okay, now I get it. And that's interesting. You can come on my book. And they'll be like, I'm already here. And so a bit of both there, really.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to change the question now for the two of you who thought you were going to answer that last question. Jax, right. So Serena asks, is there a type of character you'd like to write but are hesitant to write about?
Or to write? I would say, actually, I've been hesitant to write about some of my characters already. I was super nervous writing a demisexual character in a lesbian romance book. Not only because people don't expect romance, and they also don't expect any of that heat and intimacy that they like from romance with a demisexual character. And that was definitely, that's still there. At the same time, by having some of that intimacy there, I had to walk a line that made sure that people that are on the asexual spectrum weren't also turned off. Now, there are some that still just won't read it, and that's totally valid.
Yeah.
But being able to walk that line was hard. And I was more scared to publish that book than any other, because the backlash, if I'd screwed it up, could have been really bad. I used a lot of beta readers, and I researched and talked to other people. So I wasn't just drawing on my own experiences, but it was still really scary. And in that book, Ash has a friend who's non-binary and aromantic, and I still want to give them a spinoff, but I'm just not there yet. I don't have enough of that understanding to write like a good queer platonic relationship or anything. So there's definitely that. And I'm currently also writing a movie, and the lead of that movie is a female, a trans skateboarder, snowboarder. And so I already know that that's going to be, Lesfic is small, right? Like, we can get away with writing controversial things, and the larger world does not care. The larger world doesn't know us, right? Writing a movie that you fully intend to sell to a reasonably large studio that you want made, and then making a teen transgender lead is the scariest thing I will probably ever do.
Yeah.
But it needs to be done. The characters won't leave. The leads of that movie literally came to me in a dream. And it took a couple days for me to realize why I couldn't get a handle on who Faith was. It was because I was missing that she was trans. As soon as I realized she was trans, everything opened up in the movie. And so I look at it as, if I'm scared, is it because I'm screwing it up, which, then I need to do more research? Or is it just because there's a real potential for pushback, but I wouldn't have been given the characters if it wasn't for me to write, is my perspective. Now, not everyone will feel that way, but I don't get a ton of characters at a time. I have just a little bit at a time usually. So that's,
you're pushing boundaries, and you're pushing boundaries, but this is art. Let's remember, we're in the business of art as well as we are storytelling. So if we know this, then it's good to push boundaries. And at the same time, I want it to be relatable to most people. Yeah. And so that's where I think that's where the challenge is, but that's also where the joy is showing people that they can relate to people they would never imagine relating to. My lovely, amazing, super sexual friend absolutely loved Rising from Ash. And that, to me, that's a victory, when a person who would normally want it to be like erotica in a book is totally loving a story that has very little of that. And so I feel like there are ways to do a lot of things. Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. Katie, what about you? Is there a character you'd like to write about but are hesitant to?
Well, when I first started out actually writing professionally, Nora Whitmore was a bisexual character. And I came into like Lesfic kind of blind, I was going to do what I wanted to do and, what have you. But, I wrote her as she wanted to be written. And at the end of the day, there was some blowback because she was a bisexual character. I had no idea that was a big deal, actually. So I'm like, she's this great character and everything. And I don't know if it was because of the blowback that I decided I'm going to do this with a lot of my books. books. So, you know, a lot of, most of my books actually have included a bisexual main character. The book that I'm working on now is like maybe was scary for me. It wasn't at first because I had started writing it and it didn't feel right. I couldn't get, it wasn't working. You know, I couldn't figure out, you know, what the characters were supposed to be doing, how they were supposed to look. You know, I had this loose chapter, first couple of chapter thing, you know, and I was just like, oh, what the hell? And I went to bed one night and I woke up the next morning and I was like, oh, okay, this is what's wrong. H, who is Helen, one of the main characters, is gender fluid. She's bi gender. And I was just like, okay. And it was like, once I kind of figured that out, it started flowing. And the scary part is, I've never written anybody like that before. So I'm with Jax, you know, I was like, okay, I don't want to do this wrong, you know, because it has the potential to hurt a lot of people, you know. So I interviewed some folks and I put a call out on Twitter, you know, for beta readers and everything. And luckily, you know, some people took the nibble and decided, you know, to help, you know, along with my regular beta readers that I use. And she's been very candid. You know, if I screw something up, she'll tell me, you know, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't happen, you know. So my main thing is I want to keep things authentic. You know, when I was a person trying to figure out my sexuality, I wouldn't say very feminine, but a lot more feminine than I appear now. So when I figured things out, this is what came out. I mean, you know, so I can, and loosely, I can understand, you know, one end of the scale to the other. But how is it sometimes going back and forth, you know, or feeling that one day I'm a woman and the next day I'm a, you know, maybe the next couple of days I'm a male, you know, so I can only go so far with that, you know. So it's still scary because it's so different for me. And I wondered, you know, and I think I talked to you, talked to Jax about it a little bit, about, you know, oh, what would people think? And, you know, are they going to read something like that? And it was either you or I think it was, oh, what is her name? I can't remember who it is. You know, they were telling me, you know, you're the type of writer who doesn't seem to care what people think. You know, you kind of just write just to write, you know, it's not the concern of, oh, is this book gonna sell or whatever. And I was like, yeah, okay, I am that person, you know. So I got to the point where, okay, this is how this book is gonna be, and that's just what it is. Yep. You know, the whole book is different from what I usually write. I mean, you know, I usually write slow burns, and this book is definitely, and Jackson's heard a little bit of it, definitely not a slow burn at all. So it's kind of fun in that aspect because I'm kind of going out of my comfort zone. And even the style of writing, wouldn't you, Jack, say it was very different from what, you know, what I usually write? I mean, and it feels good. You know, it's scary, but it feels good.
Good, thank you. We're going to go on to, I want a one-word answer for this one because we've got a few minutes left and we've still got a lot of questions. So I want to make sure everybody can have an input for it. Bev asks, do you like the characters? Sorry, no, I'm going to go with this one. Sorry. Plot or character first? Which comes first, plot or character? So LL, let's start with you. Plot or character? One word.
Character.
Character, thank you. Jax?
Character.
Katie?
Character.
Arizona?
Sorry, I don't have one word. Sometimes it could be either for me.
Both. Either or both. Yeah, so they kind of come together as in they relate,
Sometimes
interact with each other.
Yeah, I'll make it short, but sometimes it's a story comes from a characters because I'm interested in someone or something, and sometimes I just have this trope or concept or idea that I want to explore.
Lovely, awesome, thank you. And Michelle?
Character, definitely, yeah.
Character, okay, super. Right, and this question's from Evie Bancroft. She asked, which character in Lesfic would you like to meet for coffee? Okay, and she says why, but can we just go with the who you'd like to meet for coffee so we can come back to a couple of other questions. So, Michelle.
There is a beautiful butch character in Missouri Vaughan's book, which I think it might be Love at Cooper's Creek, I can't remember, called Shaw Daly. I would have more than coffee with Shaw Daly.
There you go. So you've answered the bigger question. Thank you.
Sorry.
The why has come through. You've shown us the why. Arizona.
I'm blanking at the moment. I'm not entirely sure.
Could be one
right
of your
now.
Come on, one of your characters. Who are you
One
gonna
of my own. I'll take Samantha Rain for coffee. She's got a cute hellhound and she's got sarcastic humor.
Excellent. Lovely. Brilliant. Thank you. KD.
It wouldn't be coffee, it would be beer, and it would be Kelly McCabe, because I think we could sit, laugh, and shoot the shit, so to speak. So I would have no problem with that.
Excellent. Sounds cool. Jax, who are you going to take out?
Got most of the ones that I read, I love. But I think it would be really cool to hang out with Summer from Lee Winter's book, Breaking Character. Is that the right one? It's early. I think she would be just lovely to chat with.
Super. And LL? You can go for coffee, you can go for beer, or you can go for lunch.
Yeah. Well, my own characters, I would pick a character I had in one of my first books, Xena. She was one of those characters that you love to hate. But another book is I Fell in Love with Sal from Casey Luck's Rescue Her Heart. We're not going out for coffee. We ain't going out for beer. We're going straight to it. But yeah. So
thank you very much. That's brilliant. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, so Addison now asks, and it's a long question, so I'm going to paraphrase. It's talking about age groups so do you gravitate towards writing within a specific age range, age group? Are your characters all kind of within, a particular group, or is it just what it varied? So LL, far away.
Unmute. I found that I'm typically between the 30 and 40 range. I've written a few minor characters that were older, but I seem to go towards that age group. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you think that's somewhere we'd like to live?
Yes.
I'm the same, minus 30s to 40s.
Yes.
And Jax, what about you?
I want to write more older characters, but it just tends to happen however it happens. So my first, they were 40 and like 52, but then a lot of them have been in their 20s. Just there's a lot that happens at that time period. And then my movie, they're teens. So I don't know. It just happens however the characters happen. It's not
getting younger each time.
Yeah, it's a little frustrating. They need to stop that.
Time travel. KD.
I would say at first between 30 and 45, but with my latest book, Big Girl Pill, I kind of explored people in their 20s, and it was actually kind of fun.
Oh, nice. So you're getting younger too.
Yeah, I don't mind. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Good. Recreate that misspent youth. Woohoo.
Yes, exactly. There you
go. Arizona.
For me, yeah, it's like from teens upwards to probably like 40, 45 or something for main characters, and then for side characters that could be anything.
Yeah.
Really.
Okay, super. And Michelle?
Same, actually, early to mid 30s, I would say. I'm still dining out on the fact that some friend of mine who was in her late 20s thought that I was 34 once. So I feel that's given me permission to just write about 30s characters for the rest of my life. So.
Excellent. It's a nice, I think it was a nice age, if I remember it rightly. Yeah, 30 to 45. Super. Okay, well, the last question, and again, this is from Bev. This is to do with baddies. Do you create baddies, and do you like them? So, Michelle.
I have, oddly, in each of the novels that I've written, there's a sort of bad character who isn't one of the main characters, who's a sort of architect of chaos. I don't know why that is, but yeah, in each of them, actually, there's a sort of person you can really loathe deeply. I would like to write a book with a baddie main character, or certainly a darker main character. I think that's in my future for sure. Maybe not a complete out and out baddie. I find that hard. I like to have redeeming qualities, but yeah, there are baddies that you could sort of hiss when they come on the page almost.
Oh, lovely. Look forward to that. Arizona.
I think for me, baddies in itself, I think, sorry if I offend anyone, but anyone that's just a bad character is a bit boring. Even a bad guy needs to have some kind of motivation or kind of drive that is somewhat understandable. But I do have some characters that do some terrible things for terrible reasons, but they might not think so. So yeah.
And they get redeemed?
Not always. Not always. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I guess that's just how it happens.
Yeah.
Not everything turns out well, and not everything turns out bad.
Okay, and that's great, because the week keeps us guessing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. KD.
I'm with Arizona. Kind of like I guess you could say the villains, they have motivation. And while I want you to hate them or love to hate them, I want you to understand them as well. So I think every villain that I've created, I don't think there's ever been a redeemable villain that I've created, but even throughout the book, I want you to understand where they're coming from. They're still horrible people, but I want you to understand where they're coming from. So I do enjoy, writing those kind of people as well.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Loving to hear that about the motivation for villains, because everybody has motivation, and it's important that that bit comes through. Otherwise, what are they there for? Jax, what about you?
I don't like writing bad guys. When they're there, they're necessary and they're really awful. And especially in Rising from Ash, Phoenix's dad is just awful, and he's not going to be redeemed, and it's just going to be a thing. And he's based off my real life father-in-laws, and so yeah, it gets complicated then. But I do have a redeemable bad guy in my movie. So yeah, I mean, there are times when that's okay, but I'm not fond of them. I prefer inner conflict anyway, but yeah. Real life has bad guys, so I have to just kind of face it.
Yep. Thank you. LL?
Yeah, I absolutely love writing the bitch. Oh, am I allowed to say bitch? Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
That is one of my favorite characters to write. Sometimes they're redeemed, sometimes they're not. As a matter of fact, the third book in the series of Knights of Lily Anne will deal with the hardest Ice Queen, just it's disturbed soul that there ever was, and she'll be redeemed, but I just love that character. That is one of my favorite characters to write ever since day one of book one. So I look forward to them.
I look forward to that too. That sounds awesome. They've got a long way to go. I mean, if they've got a long way to go, it's going to be fun getting them there. Super. Right. I think there are comments saying that my room's dark. It's nighttime coming along here because it's already 4:30. It gets dark early. So apologies if I'm in the shadow somewhere. I want to thank everybody on the panel. You've been absolutely amazing, and it's fantastic. And it's for me, it's also a pleasure to meet authors I haven't met before. So thank you, and thank you for your major contribution. I hope everybody who's listening, watching, who listens later has thoroughly enjoyed it. And I thank the audience that sent in some fantastic questions as well. Big thanks and shout out to Jen for arranging all of this, of course, because she's done an amazing job. And we're all going to be up for the next one, aren't we? We are. Hell yeah. We'll be here. Okay. And until then, there's another session coming on later. So please, everybody, tune in and enjoy some more audience, more chat with authors. So thank you very much. Bye.